It's time to sit back, relax, and listen to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life will inspire, motivate, and empower you. Live your best life now. Listen, learn, think, and decide. Change your attitude, change your life. And now, here's your host, Joan Herman.
Welcome to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. You're listening to us in your neighborhood, from coast to coast, and around the world. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Joan Herman, author, speaker, and your host. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life brings you interviews with some of the most inspirational and influential people in the world. It's our goal to educate and empower you so you can live your best life now. Thank you for taking time for yourself, and thank you for letting us be a part of your life. We have another great show for you today. Joining me is Dr. Adam Perlman, who is here to discuss a proven plan for combating stress by learning how to shift our response to it. Dr. Perlman is a recognized leader in the field of integrative medicine and a researcher and educator in the field of complementary and alternative medicine and wellness. His research has been published in the Archives of Internal Medicine and the New York Times. He is the executive director for Duke Integrative Medicine. Welcome, Dr. Perlman. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be on the show.
Doctor, we hear so much about stress being our enemy, something that wreaks havoc on our physical and emotional health, and it's almost like we view it as this thing that is out there, that's out of our control. But you say that it isn't stress that's so dangerous, but rather our response to it. What does that statement mean?
Well, so that's a great question. I think, first of all, we need stress. Right, so stress is very important for us on one level. So, for example, if we didn't react in a stressful way to a danger, and physiologically our heart starts to beat faster, our muscles get ready to move, and then we can escape that danger, obviously we wouldn't be able to survive as an individual and as a species. The problem is that in our current society, we've switched over from sort of a lot of acute stress situations to this chronic stressful situation, and that physiologically is very different. That begins to take a real toll on the body, and so it's become very important that we learn ways to manage stress, in particular chronic stress, so that we don't continue to manifest many of the sort of medical issues that are related to it, everything from insomnia to increased risk of heart disease, diabetes, even cancer. So when we say take control of it, I mean, it's interesting. I love how you say change your attitude, change your life, and I would totally agree with that. I think the thought with the MeQuilibrium program is change the way you think about stressful events, and you can change your reaction to those stressful events and therefore manage stress.
Doctor, in your opinion, what are some of the triggers that put us into that chronic state?
Well, so we have what we refer to as sort of this emotional radar. So we are constantly scanning our environment and looking at various events within our environment. And again, that's an important thing. As we're walking across the street, we're scanning that environment to see if all of a sudden a car comes around the corner and looks like it's in our path. We're going to feel some fear, react, and jump back. But very often, as we scan our environment, we maybe react to things in an emotional way that leads to this experience of stress. And so it could be anything. It could be our boss calling us and saying, I really need to speak with you later today. And what happens then is we have an emotion that's tied into that. We might feel fearful. Is our boss upset with us? And there's a process that we describe to look at that emotion, to then look at the thought behind that emotion and challenge that thought to really determine whether or not we should be feeling this experience of stress that we're actually feeling. So we call it trap it, map it, and zap it. So to give you an example, going back to that, I'm feeling stressful in the moment. Let me think about it. Let's use a real example. So I have this interview with you today, right? I'm very excited to be here on your show, but of course, I want to make sure I do well, and I'm feeling a little bit anxious. The interview's coming up in an hour. What's going on for me? So the emotion I may be experiencing is anxiety. So what is the thought that often is kind of behind that? That thought often is, well, something bad might happen, right? That's what's behind anxiety. So once you've trapped that thought, you've mapped it to the emotion, you've mapped it to the actual thought, then you can kind of zap that thought, look at it and see, well, what's behind that? What might happen? Might you ask me a question that I don't know the answer to? Might I embarrass myself? What kind of things would I really be worried about? Well, the truth is, I mean, this is an area of expertise of mine. I love the book that we've done. I love the program that we've developed. I live this as well as sort of talk about it. So that's really an unlikely scenario. And so once I can look at it from that perspective, then I can sort of shift out of that anxiety state.
Doctor, in your book, MeQuilibrium, you write about 7 thinking traps, and you just spoke about emotions. What are some other thinking traps that place us in that state of stress?
We talk about sort of the 7 kind of major emotional responses that people tend to have. So anxiety was one that I mentioned. And again, the thought behind that often is something bad's going to happen. Anger is another one that's common for people. And typically the thought associated with that is, my rights have been violated. I feel angry. Embarrassment is another. I've lost some standing in someone's eyes. Shame, frustration, guilt, and sadness. Those are sort of the main emotions that we tend to think about and have problems with. And then the thinking traps, so that's a little bit different. It's ways that we begin to sort of think about the world and events that occur and these patterns that we can get into. So I'll give you an example. Mind reading. That's one that I know I've caught myself doing on occasion. So it's really obviously expecting others to know what you're thinking. So that's sort of a thinking trap that we can get into. You can sort of begin to zap that thinking trap by saying, have I really communicated what I want or need from this person clearly and adequately?
Doctor, in your book, you also write about iceberg beliefs. They seem like they would have a major role in creating stress in our life. What are they, and what impact do they play?
Iceberg beliefs can be these sort of major beliefs that we have about the world and the way the world should be. They often form when we're younger. Maybe we observe our parents and the way they tend to react to things. And the way to identify them often is when you find yourself saying to yourself, well, this should be this way, or these sort of definitive statements about the way things should be. I always want people to think the best of me, or I need to avoid conflict at all costs. And these sort of rather very dramatic beliefs where the statement is sort of the tip of the iceberg, if you will, in terms of your belief about the way the world should be. And there's different ways to address or to deal with icebergs. So we talk about sort of 3 different strategies. One is to embrace it, because sometimes that belief is a good thing, and not a negative belief, but maybe it needs to be embraced in a different way. So, I should always be there for people I love. Okay, let's consider that an iceberg belief. Mm-hmm. But the trick is to recognize that there can be a downside to that belief. And so, sometimes we need to embrace it and just sort of shave off the edges of the iceberg. So just give you an example, I should always be there for people I love, but if my aging parents live 3,000 miles away, I have to recognize I can't always physically be there for them. I can try my best to visit often. I can be supportive in other ways. I can make sure to call frequently. So that would be sort of embracing it. Sometimes it's more negative, and we really want to try to sort of melt that belief because it can cause more frustration than good. So I should be respected by all people at all times. I mean, some people get into this sort of extreme belief, and it makes sense to sort of melt that and kind of reshape it, which to more I deserve basic respect, but that doesn't mean that people should grant every wish that I have. The third strategy is sort of steer around that belief. So, we bump up against an iceberg that really isn't serving us. And it may only jump up on rare occasions, and, there's ways to sort of steer around that belief. Some people have friction and beliefs around, let's say, visiting with their in-laws, and, that may bring up a lot of emotions, but that event doesn't happen all the time, and they can sort of control the emotions and kind of steer around that particular iceberg as it begins to pop up.
So, Doctor, now we have a bit of an understanding of what stress is and how it can be managed with our thoughts. But let's talk a little bit about things we can do on a physical level. So, diet and nutrition. What should our diet look like to combat stress?
There's a vast body of literature out there on various diets and dietary approaches. The one thing I like to talk about with diet as it relates to stress is the issue of inflammation. So we live in a very pro-inflammatory world. We don't tend to get enough sleep. That builds up inflammation. The diet that we eat, a standard American diet, tends to be very pro-inflammatory to our bodies. That inflammation can lead to many physical manifestations. Things like diabetes, heart disease are pro-inflammatory states. So in general, to help fight off stress and for one's overall health, I typically recommend a diet that is more anti-inflammatory. So less reliance on red meat, more fruits and vegetables. Again, not necessarily saying vegetarian, but just finding more of a balance, more lean meats, more fish, certainly more fruits and vegetables, avoiding unprocessed sugars and processed foods are particularly important. I also think it's important to supplement, because at times, even despite our best efforts, we may not get in all of the nutrients that we need, and there are certain supplements, vitamins that can be particularly helpful as it relates to stress. Things like B vitamins, magnesium, these kind of things can be supplemented fairly easily and can help someone physiologically to sort of not only manage stress, but deal with some of the physiologic ramifications of stress. The other thing that's important when you talk on the physical side is regular exercise. And I think that's interesting too, and there's a lot of even some new literature that's been coming out on exercise and how much is appropriate. And, I think one wants to be moving, making sure that we're moving on a regular basis and active on a daily basis. I think, regular exercise where we're doing at least, 30 minutes, 3 to 5 times per week, is something that we all want to try to strive for. And I think, the level of exercise may vary for people. And there is also something as too much exercise too, and that's been interesting to see in the literature lately that, if one is exercising strenuously too much, that can have some negative ramifications physiologically and affect someone's overall health in a negative way.
You also mentioned sleep deprivation. How much sleep should we be getting every night, and does that have a major role in combating stress?
Without a doubt. And again, it's a little bit of a chicken or the egg there. I mean, I think that obviously stress can lead to people having difficulty sleeping. Sleep deprivation can make us less resilient, less able to deal with the ramifications of stress and stressful events in our lives. And in general, we don't get enough sleep, and that's whether it's adults or children. It's hard to say exactly what the human body needs. I mean, again, the data there is variable, but in general, we want to be getting, 7 to 8 hours on average of good sleep, good quality of sleep per night. There's a number of techniques and things that people can do if they're having difficulty falling asleep, sort of developing good sleep hygiene and good habits around that. You want to be setting a regular bedtime. You want to make sure you're not drinking any caffeine, certainly in the afternoon or after noon for many people. Sometimes a sleep supplement may be helpful, things like melatonin or a sleepy time tea. There's something called magnesium glycinate can be helpful to help people sleep. Really creating a bedtime routine is important. I often recommend that people take sort of the 30 minutes before they want to actually fall asleep and, begin to sort of get into a more relaxed state, using the bed primarily for sleep and not for TV or sitting in bed listening to the radio or being on the computer in that 30 minutes prior to sort of going to bed, but really allowing things to quiet down. Now with the tablet readers, it's been interesting to see that, stimulating the brain with bright light can have effects on sort of our sleep cycle. So even using one of those tablets so that you're reading and have that bright light at night is probably not a great idea. Another thing that we do and that I recommend is having some night lights. So if you do have to get up in the middle of the night to use the restroom, you don't have to put a bright light on. You have maybe a night light so you can find your way, obviously without tripping. But putting that bright light on in the middle of the night can actually, again, affect the brain in such a way that it sort of tells the brain, oh, the sun has come up, it's time to wake up, and may make it more difficult for you to fall back asleep. And then, sometimes having even a mantra, so let's say a saying that might work for you. And this doesn't work for everyone, but things like, sleep will come when it comes, or I work hard and deserve my sleep, and just sort of allowing yourself to kind of go into this state of more relaxed space where you're sort of preparing yourself to get a good night's rest.
Doctor, continuing on about sleep, I know some people, because you mentioned good quality sleep. I know people that say, well, I sleep about 5 hours during the night. I'll wake up a little bit. I'll sleep another hour. I'll catch a nap during the day. And it comes out to around 7 hours. Is that the same thing?
It's really not. I mean, and again, it can be a little bit complicated. One of the questions that I ask my patients and that someone can ask themselves is, when you wake up in the morning, do you feel rested? So if you are continually getting up, that alarm goes off, and you're still feeling exhausted and not feeling refreshed, that's a sign that you may not be getting the quality sleep that you need to, even if you're physically in bed 8 to 10 hours, and may indicate a need to get some further investigation of that sleep, certainly discussing it, with your doctor. I think the other thing to look for is excessive sleepiness during the day, particularly issues of sort of nodding off unintentionally. That can indicate particular sleep disorders, but also may be a sign of just poor quality sleep at night, and something that may need further investigation.
The book is MeQuilibrium, 14 Days to Cooler, Calmer, and Happier, co-authored by Dr. Adam Perlman. If you'd like more information, you can visit the website, MeQuilibrium.com. Doctor, in our final moments, what I would like to leave our listeners with is your prescription, a tip or two that someone can do right now to create instant calm in his or her life.
There are many ways that we can find calm. And I think the key is that each individual needs to find what works for them. So I think it's important to see stress as both physiologic, sort of mental, psychological, as well as physical, and ultimately find a routine that works for you. So, seek out a yoga class, learn some meditation. Those are things that can be tools that you use to begin to find a calmer place to be. Find a mantra, a saying that works for you, and something that you can repeat. Another thing that we like to emphasize that I think is important is some journaling. So we talked briefly about some of the negative emotions. There are also positive emotions like happiness and pride and interest and love. And, set an intention. Okay, I want to be more happy. And one way to start that is by just sitting down and writing down those things in your life that bring you happiness. Keep that list with you and refer to it throughout the day. And remind yourself of the things that can bring you happiness. And I think that can be very helpful. At the end of the day, my particular interest, our interest in MeQuilibrium, is really looking further upstream and trying to get at the root cause of the stress. And that really requires this process of trapping it, mapping it, and zapping it, and really beginning to understand the thoughts and the thinking styles sort of behind the emotional reaction that you're having that's leading to this state of stress. So, and it can be done. It can be learned. It just takes a little bit of practice and commitment to it. We can really learn to think differently about those stressful events and react differently and be in a much more calm space.
Dr. Perlman, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, if you'd like to get more information, visit MeQuilibrium.com. We'll be right back. Hi, this is Joan Herman, host of Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Did you know that Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life has a free monthly digital magazine that can be read online or emailed to your inbox? Every month, nationally recognized leaders in their field provide information to educate, inspire, and motivate you. We believe in a holistic approach to life, incorporating mind, body, and spirit. Check out a copy of Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life 24/7. Visit cyacyl.com and be sure to tell your friends. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you found the show informative. At Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life, we believe that knowledge is power. Take what you've learned, apply it, and live your best life now. Remember that the information provided are the opinions of our guests and should never replace the advice of a professional who knows your personal situation. If you'd like more information, visit our website, cyacyl.com. That stands for Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. While on the site, listen to past shows on demand, read the digital magazine, and be sure to follow the show on Facebook and Twitter. Until next time, this is Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in.